Hello, and this is my CreepShow review. This film was released in 1981, if I remember correctly. Let me make sure I have my... Nope, sorry. 1982. November 1982, with a very small budget. It's an exploitation film, and basically it's a series of anthology films based upon either previously publicated horror pulp stories of the 1950s with a few Stephen King short stories. This film was directed by George A. Romero, and the script for it was written by Stephen King. Yes, that George Romero, that's Stephen King. So you know this shit's gonna be scary. Okay, so basically there are two films that I'm reviewing for this. This first part's gonna be CreepShow, the first one. The second one's gonna be CreepShow 2. Both films basically kind of have a meta story going on between each short story. So basically the meta story in the first film is that a young boy wants to read a horror comic kind of like named CreepShow. It's kind of like Tales from the Crypt, which was actually a comic book, or Cemetery Digest or something like that. And basically his father is kind of a douchebag, and basically slaps the hell out of him for reading this comic called CreepShow. And so what happens is that the kid basically gets sent to his room, and he's sitting in his room cursing out his dad. And he hears a sound, a tap on his window, and he looks and he sees the creeper from the CreepShow, who's actually a real person. Then it gets animated. It's actually pretty cool. So, and we go into our first story called Father's Day. Basically, in Father's Day, there's this dude who made his money through illicit means, and he has his daughter. His daughter basically loses her mind and kills him on Father's Day. And 7 years later, he comes back. And he's revived. He comes back. He proceeds to kill everyone except for his great-grandchildren. And he kills his daughter. He kills his granddaughter. He kills her husband. He kills a lot of people except for his great-grandchildren. And he comes into the living room with holding this platter with his daughter's head on it. Now, there's more to it than that, but I don't want to ruin it for you. It's pretty damn... It's not the best story in this group, but it's pretty good. Then we have one of my favorite ones called The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. And Jordy Verrill is played by Stephen King himself. And basically, Jordy Verrill is an idiot. He's a backwoods yokel, and he finds this meteorite on his property. He goes to touch it, and it's too hot, so he douses it with water to cool it down. It cracks open, and this glowing green substance comes out, and it begins to grow on everything. And he touches this green substance, and this parasitic plant starts to grow all over him and all over his property. And basically, Jordy has a vision from his dead father that says, don't jump, don't drink water, don't jump in the water, don't take a bath, because if you do, this parasitic and this thing basically wants water, and it needs water in order to survive. But Jordy can't take the itching that this stuff is causing him, so he jumps into the water, and he basically when he wakes, he passes out he gets some relief from the water. When he wakes up, it's covered his entire body, and basically, like, he's suffering horrifically. And basically, in desperation, he grabs a shotgun, and he says, "Please," like in this very muffled voice, "Please, God, please, just this once, please, God." Like he's begging for it to work. And he shoots himself in the head to end his suffering. And that's the end of this thing. Or is it? Because as the camera pans out, you see this wonderful little, you hear this radio weather forecast that says there's going to be a lot of rain, and his entire farm is covered with this vegetation from this alien meteor. So the next short story is a little something called Something to Tide You Over. This one is a little, is kind of, it's a little on the humorous side. It stars Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen. And Ted Danson plays a tennis guy who sleeps with this rich man's wife. The rich man also happens to be fucking crazy, played by Leslie Nielsen. And basically, he buries his wife up to her neck in a beach with the tide coming in. And then he does the same thing to her affair mate, person she cheated on him with, played by Ted Danson. And he shows a closed-circuit TV of her drowning. He's like, well, you know, look, if you hold your breath long enough when the tide comes in, the water, the tide might loosen up the sand so you can get out. So basically, of course, this doesn't happen. So Leslie Nielsen is all happy and jovial. He got rid of his unfaithful wife and her ex-husband. And basically, he hears some shit going on as he's about to go to bed. And out come these zombies that look like the people that he just murdered earlier that day by burying them in the neck down. Up to the neck in sand in a beach that's the tide's coming in. So basically, like they grab him and they bury him in the same way that he killed them. And he's basically, the tide's coming in, and he just, like, he snaps. He starts laughing maniacally. He's like, well, you know what? You think this is gonna stop me? He's like, I can hold my breath for a long time. And this is actually pretty, this is actually one of my favorite stories because it shows Leslie Nielsen is capable of more than just, you know, totally deadpan. You know, what we know him as is the dude from Police Squad or those parody films, but really Leslie Nielsen had greater depth than that. The next story in CreepShow is The Crate, which basically is about this professor who has a nagging, aggravating wife, and how he decides to get rid of her when he discovers that at the college that he works for has this crate that basically has this creature inside of it that kills people horrifically. Eventually, this guy basically finds out a way with the help of his friend to get rid of this woman, and his friend basically locks it in the thing and then locks it back in its crate and dumps it into a river. But it turns out, like, at the end, the dude's like, well, what if it gets out? And the dude's like, there's no way it could get out. It turns out that the locks were broken when it was dumped in the water. And as a matter of fact, it's going to escape and come back for everyone. Which leads me to the fifth and perhaps the creepiest story in the CreepShow 1 anthology, which is They're Creeping Up on You. It's about a rich asshole in New York who lives in this ultra high-tech for the 80s apartment that's hermetically sealed and very, you know, nice and very sterilized and everything. And he finds a roach and he loses his shit. He's like, well, what am I paying all this money for? So basically, he's calling all of these various things to get someone to come and deal with these roaches. And he basically, each interaction he has with the outside world through his phone, you find out he's an asshole. Like, one of his rivals killed himself because the dude was basically took over his business. he threatens to fire a dude who's out on holiday with his family. And he also turns out to be a racist prick because he says some overly racist things to the black custodian, tenant, landlord, superintendent of the building. So basically, while all this is going on, the dude keeps on seeing all these roaches. Like, he tries to fix some type of smoothie type thing, and he looks inside of it, and there's a roach in it. There's like a crushed up roach, and he's like, oh shit. So, like, eventually he sees them everywhere. He's like, fuck it. He locks himself inside of a panic room, and he sees that they're in the panic room, and he has a heart attack. He loses his shit, and he has a heart attack. And, you know, there's a lightning storm going on, so lights are flicking on and off. And then the super finally comes inside, and he's like, he sees he looks around, and he doesn't see the dude. He can't see the panic room, so he doesn't know the dude's in there. He's like, oh well. And he leaves, and you see the dude's body there. No roaches, it's just perfectly clean. Then you see this blood start to come from off the side. Now, obviously, it's a mannequin at this point, but it's pretty nice. This blood and out of the mouth of this guy's body comes all of these roaches. They burst through his stomach. They burst through his face. They burst through. It's really, really creepy. Even today, it's one of the reasons why I hate roaches. Oh, I hate roaches. So, that leads us to the finale of this film, which is the epilogue, where basically two garbage collectors find the CreepShow comic book in the trash. They look in the ads in the back, because these types of comics used to have ads in the back for, like, x-ray glasses, hovercraft, blueprints, stuff like that. And they see all the stuff is gone. All the good stuff is gone. And they also see that an advertisement for the voodoo doll has been clipped out. Inside the house of this young boy, whose father was being an asshole earlier, he starts complaining about neck pain, and like it goes from bad to worse to, oh shit, this dude's about to die. And you see his son in his room stabbing this voodoo doll in the neck. Yeah, and that's the end of the very first CreepShow film. This is the end of part 1 of this review. We will get into the next section after the next film after the cut. So stay tuned. Okay then, we're back with the second part of this review, where we'll be focusing on CreepShow 2. Now, CreepShow 2 is the direct sequel to CreepShow. When I say sequel, I don't mean like the story is continued, but there's some elements that are the same. This film was released in 1987. It was considered a box office flop, but it was really good. It made, I want to say, almost 3 times its budget, and it's kind of a sleeper hit. Not quite as good as the first one because it has less stories, but it's pretty good. The film was directed by Michael Gornick. He was one of the associate cinematographers on the first film, so you know, you have a lot of stuff. And Tom Savini, Tom Savini, I believe, did kind of help out, so that's good. So here we go. This one, the meta story in this one is about a young boy who's being bullied by these this kid who looks like he should have a beard and kids, and who basically feels that, you know, they bully this boy so much that he's decided to buy some giant Venus flytraps. And basically, you know, this kid gets this next issue of CreepShow from this delivery guy, and the dude gets in his van and drives off. And the dude looks at the camera, and he turns into the creep from the CreepShow. So the CreepShow guy. So, and then we get to the first story, which is called Old Chief Woodenhead. basically this elderly couple basically run this small town store, and basically the small town store had seen better days. It was used to be like the center of the community, but when they moved the main road or something like that, the store's customer base dried up and a lot of the people left. So basically they're like, they know that the town is dying, their store is dying, but they're gonna go down with dignity. Anyway, they're visited by a Native American dude from a local tribe who gives them some turquoise jewelry as collateral for a debt that they incurred. And the old people are like, well, I mean, you know, you can't give us this. This belongs to your tribe. They're like, no, take it. I'll have the money for you, you know, sometime in the future. And they're like, well, okay, fine, then we'll hold it for you. But once you get the money, we'll give it back to you. So basically, one of the key points in this scene is that the old man who runs the store is working on this Indian wooden statue of a named Chief Woodenhead. Okay, big dude, very strong, big, one of those kind of sideshow type things you see in the West. Anyway, later that night, these older people are robbed and murdered by this guy who's related to the Native American dude and two of his friends. They kill his wife and then they kill him because the guy wouldn't give them the turquoise stuff. The three thugs then drive away, but shit turns bad because old Chief Woodenhead comes to life and hunts them down, Native American style. He kills the fat guy by punching him in the stomach and ripping out his guts. The other dude, he kills by stabbing him through the chest. Finally, the mastermind of all of this, who's got a shotgun, he's shooting this dude, but he's made out of wood, tries to lock himself in a bathroom and escape out of a window. But Chief Woodenhead punches through the wall, grabs him by his long, flowing Native American hair, and pulls him through the wall and scalps him. And that's the end of this. That's the end of Chief Wooden. That's the end of this dude. But cuts to the next day, and the Indian chief comes back in order to pay the collateral. He finds that his turquoise jewelry is still there, and he sees old Chief Woodenhead on his pedestal with his nephew's bloody scalp, a blood-stained knife, and fresh war paint that's blood on his cheeks. And basically, they find out what happened to the people that own this thing. Basically, Chief Woodenhead ain't playing around. So next we have the second story of 3 in this anthology of CreepShow 2, which is called The Raft. Basically, these 4 college students are, getting out for summer vacation, and they go to this lake in order to go swimming. After they make their way to a wooden raft, they find this black blob in the lake that proceeds to eat people. It eats everyone except for, it eats almost everyone, except for this last guy who thinks he can outswim it. He makes it, but then it jumps out of the water and gets him anyway. And the camera pans out, and you see these bushes, and the wind blows. The bushes sway out of the way, and you see this sign that says "No swimming." And now on to my favorite story in this anthology of CreepShow 2, which is called The Hitchhiker. This film takes place in Maine. That's right, Maine. And basically, there's this guy, there's this woman who's basically cheating on her husband, and she gets a phone call, and her husband says he's coming home early, and she's realized, oh shit, I gotta beat him to the house. Well, while she's driving to get home, she sees this hitchhiker. She accidentally kills a hitchhiker, and he's this black guy, and she hits him, and she drives off because no one was there to see it. Well, these passerbys come and see, who report the hit. Passerbys see the dead guy, they report it, and there's this whole back scene where her husband meets up with the police, and he's an attorney. He's like, oh shit, I can't believe this shit's going down. Basically, this woman keeps on driving, thinks she's gotten away, but then she starts to see this hitchhiking dude. This hitchhiking dude, and they're like, oh shit. She freaks out. Everywhere she goes, she sees him. And every time she sees him, he says, "Thanks for the ride, lady." So basically, and every time she sees him after this point, she tries to run him over. He gets on the roof of her car. She friggin' uses, and she's got like a sunroof, and she rolls it up on his hand, and his hand comes off. She runs him over. She just tries her best to just kill him. He gets on the front of her car, the front of her car, and the front of the car. I forget the name of it. And she runs him into a tree and just keeps on bashing this corpse over and over and over again. Well, eventually she gets back home, and she thinks that the hitchhiker is gone. And she gets there before her husband. She's in the garage. She opens the car door. The hitchhiker comes out. And he's completely all just fucked up, just falling apart. And he basically he manages to utter, "Thanks for the ride, lady." He attacks her, and she loses her shit. And basically, her husband, who turns out to be the man who reported the hit and run, finally arrives home to find her in her car, dead from carbon monoxide poisoning, caused for her still running the car, and a hitchhiker sign around her neck saying "Dover" from the hitchhiker. Yeah, it's pretty good. So basically, that's the end of this anthology, with the meta story being that this kid who's being bullied by these bullies is getting chased at the very end. He manages to lead them to a vacant lot with all of this wild, out of control plant growth, and it turns out that there's giant Venus flytraps here, and basically the giant Venus flytraps eat the bullies, all of them, and that's the end. So that leads to our conclusion of the CreepShow series, and a general wrap-up of everything. After the cut. Okay then, here's what you need to realize about CreepShow 2. This film is not as good as the first film. It's not as good as the first film. But it's pretty good. Two of the stories are kind of weak. Old Chief Woodenhead is a little weak. The second story, The Raft, is kind of weak. The third one is a good one, though. It's a bang. It's really good. You might ask yourself, what about CreepShow 3? Well, there was a CreepShow 3 released in the 2000s, but it wasn't very good. What many people consider to be the sequel to CreepShow 3 is Tales from the Dark Side, because it has quite a few Stephen King stories in it, and it has that CreepShow vibe to it. So if you ever get a chance to watch that film, and Halloween's coming up next week, do it! Do it! Do it, Maria! Do it! Do it! With that being said, CreepShow is one of my favorite films. Both CreepShow 1 and CreepShow 2. They're two of my favorite films to watch on Halloween. They're two of my favorite Stephen King films, because some of the stories are inspired by Stephen King stories. So, That's pretty cool. Stay tuned for our next installment, next film that we'll be doing for Stephen King in September, called It. That's right, I'll be tackling It. So there you go. Have a good day.